You may have seen recently that here in Texas soon, every public school is going to be required to post the Ten Commandments on the wall in every single classroom. As a Jesus follower, I have several problems with this, and it makes me uncomfortable. My first question is why? What do these legislators hope to accomplish through this? At this point, they're not asking teachers to teach the Ten Commandments, they're just wanting them posted, but it seems like a slippery slope. My guess is that these legislators want to begin to Christianize the state of Texas, and this is a first small step. But here's the problem. Texas isn't a Christian state, and the United States isn't a Christian nation. If you've watched any of my videos, you know I did one a while back where I stated the statistics on how many Americans are actually living daily by biblical principles and following Jesus's words and beliefs. And it's like 5% of America. So while 70% may say they're Christians, really only 5% are actually following what Jesus says. Now, in Texas, maybe that's a little bit higher, but it certainly can't be more than 15%, and it's not a majority. There may be a majority of people in Texas who actually think this is okay, or they're not bothered by it. They're like, I don't care if those are in the classroom or not, but that still doesn't make it right. My wife and I just returned from Europe, and in every city we visited, there are these beautiful old churches. I mean, old churches. But most of them are more like museums now than places of worship. Many of these churches were built by kings, and those kings wanted their people to worship the same God they did, and some of them even subjugated them into this faith. But religious subjugation has never had good results, and with good reason. Forcing someone to believe something they don't believe, especially in matters of faith, is never going to work. And Europe has seen a huge decline in people having faith in any religion at all. So why does this make me uncomfortable? Well, first, because this is not the way Jesus went about sharing his love, nor how he asked the disciples to spread his love. In fact, the Jews and some of his followers wanted Jesus to be a political and an earthly and political king, but that wasn't his plan. He was planning a heavenly kingdom. He didn't come to overthrow the Romans and establish his own kingdom. Instead, he gave people the choice to follow him because of his love for them, just as he does now. And he asked his disciples to go into the towns and the other countries and to preach the good news of his love for them, but not to force it on people. If these legislators are hoping to show the love of Jesus through this action, I don't see how that's going to work. In fact, it seems pretty offensive to me. And if I were not a follower of Jesus, I'd not think much of people who forced me to be exposed to the beliefs against my own will, or my kids to be exposed to that. I'm not in school anymore, obviously. Nor would I probably have an interest in their God if they were forcing this on me. I'm also uncomfortable because the First Amendment of the Constitution clearly allows the freedom of religion in the United States and says that a government should not have a religion. And this seems like it could be Texas, the government of Texas, moving toward having a stated religion. If you're posting stuff based on one religion in school, every public school, it's hard to not think you're moving in that direction. Finally, I'm not sure these legislators even understand what the Ten Commandments are really all about. Paul tells us in Galatians and in Romans that one of the main reasons for the law is to show us what sin is, that we can't possibly save ourselves by keeping the law. Jesus doubles down on this in the Sermon on the Mount by telling us that if you hate someone, it's the same, or excuse me, if you hate someone, it's the same as murdering them. If you lust after someone, it's the same as adultery, and so on. The Ten Commandments were there to point out our need for someone to rescue us because there's no way we could keep them perfectly. So how is posting those in a classroom filled with mostly non-believing students and possibly non-believing teachers going to have any effect other than being offensive at worst or ignored at best? I really don't know. If you don't know Jesus and you're turned off from him because the Christians are trying to force this on you and your kids, I get it. But please know they're not representing him well. There are plenty of us that are just as turned off by this practice, but we love Jesus because he first loved us. Jesus doesn't want to force himself on you. He won't. But he invites you to follow him because he loves you and died for you to reconcile you to God. If you are a Christian and you support the Ten Commandments in schools, ask yourself how you'd feel if instead your child was going to a school every day where a different religion's principles were posted and your child was exposed to those. I'll bet you wouldn't like it. I'm disappointed in us, Texas. Disappointed that we hired or that we elected leaders who claim to follow Jesus, but don't lead with the selfless, servant minded, love your neighbor leadership Jesus spoke about. Even with all this, let's try to live with grace and forgive because Jesus has forgiven us.